Okay, so we are all now. For the beginning, thank you for the performance and your goodwill to have a discussion after a performance. I will make a brief introduction of our guest's company. Worst Case Scenario Company unites 4 independent Israeli artists from various fields of art with a background in performance, circus, and music. In their work, they paint a complex picture of reality from a poetic point of view, combining it with their virtuosic abilities in their unique disciplines. So for the start, I would like to ask you to tell us a bit more about your backgrounds, your artistic education, starting points, and later when and how did you meet and when did you decide to have a company?
I will start from the end. It's okay. I know Namer from kindergarten, so we know for a long time.
That's the beginning, no?
Yes. And so we grew in at the same neighborhood. I was studying theater and directing, and then also performance. And I know Gil and Tomilio through Namer.
Me, I saw a show of I'm a Juggler, and I saw a show of Daniel well, I saw many shows of Daniel, but one show that was really, for me, influential. It was called I
Am a Woman Warrior.
I Am a Woman Warrior, a warrioress, and it was documentary. It was a show where Danielle explored her past as a warrior, her past incarnation as a warrior, and she did many things, many actions in reality to try and explore this subject, and she did a show about what she did. And me, this was really, it was touching me in a certain way, where I thought I want to make a contemporary circus show, and this kind of thing, that reality that we ended up calling the documentary performance. It was really connecting to me. And then Tomilio and Gil, they were my friends, and they're super talented, so we were happy to join work with them.
We are just talented. I never did an organized school for a whole year, but I was in an afternoon activity in circus for a long time. And I practiced a lot on my own, and I took many workshops in Israel and abroad. So I can call myself a generalist, but the main thing for now is acrobatics. And I know Namer actually was around me in the Israeli juggling convention. That was now the 26th, right? And where I met him first time was in Germany in an European juggling convention. And that's how I know him. And from meeting with Namer in his house, I got to know Daniel and Gil.
Well, to answer your question, I'm an artist. But no, I don't. I'm a graphic designer, so that's where I get my paycheck. And yeah, I just I paint, I do music and stuff like that.
Amazing artist, everything he does, and he built this machine by himself.
Yeah.
With the help of a friend, but by himself, really.
Does it have a name or just machine or?
It has like a brand name. Like an Acme, that's the brand name.
It's called Acme.
The cartoon, like explosives and anvils and stuff.
Everybody understood what you just said. Now I can see by their faces.
So we could see that the performance has a structure of various scenes and acts, such as poetry, storytelling, dance, circus skills, live music, and it's a good example of device theater. So therefore, I would like to ask you, what was your starting point? Where did you start, and how the whole process like came together?
So when we started to work, or when Namer had this idea maybe to do a joint work, so we look for a subject that we feel that surrounding us, and we can dive into it for a long time. So the conflict was the subject that in our life everywhere, in our personal life and in our country, and we actually went to a rehearsal room for a time of a year, and we brought materials from our life to this to the rehearsal. Like we had we had some assignments that we tried to do in our life to see how it influenced us. Some was big failures, and some had some successes. I was trying to, for example, record stuff from my life, and I couldn't. I was working with the recorder machine all the time, and I couldn't record anything because nothing happened. And then I met Namer, and I told him, this is really suck, and I hate this machine, and this is a bad idea, and I will never be able to record anything. And when I got back home, I recorded this fight that became this partiture that I'm doing.
The fight from our neighbors, which is actually a recording of 30 minutes of our neighbors fighting like this in curses, like they did, but we just got a small piece of it. Also, I want to add that we chose this subject of conflict because it was interesting. It was something that we found interesting on a personal level to explore this subject, to learn how to deal better with conflicts in our life, to understand a little bit more the meaning of this subject, and this is why we chose it.
And because we fight a lot.
It's true.
For example, if you notice, there is a lot of rain in the show. So we thought, what can stop a conflict just like this, cut it in the middle, so people can shout at each other, and then rain comes and they just go, because they ran out of the rain.
People in Israel and Palestine are scared of rain. Not like seriously scared of rain, it just doesn't rain a lot. So when it rains, we're all like, it's raining.
Yeah, so it was like from the beginning that you consciously decide to do the performance like universal, you know, that it's not located somewhere exactly, but that also the conflicts are like very personal, as you say, and it's not like...
I think the performance is not universal, it's on stage. Like it's not that we locate things that we're obviously us on stage, and we're telling stories to the people there. So we're not trying to, even if we say some things they happen in Tel Aviv, it's us here telling you that this thing happened in Tel Aviv, and in this way it's not universal happening everywhere. It's happening here. It's our real life.
I want to add also that I didn't thought it was universal. In the beginning, we did it in Hebrew and in Israel. For an Israel audience, it was not meant to go abroad. And the first time a festival invited us, we needed to translate everything, and we didn't know how what we are saying will meet the audience. And the first meeting was very shocking, because in Israel this is very funny, and people are laughing and saying, we know it, this is how we live. And we first perform in England, and it was very sad there. And they say like, oh my God, this is how you live, this is horrible. And like the show has a complete different point of view, because when it's about us, with us, we must take the tension with laughter. And when it's from a different point of view, it's very reflecting back to us, and we are like, oh my God, this is how we live.
Yeah, but we can kind of see that you cope with some serious topics through the humor and absurd, and it's like you don't really have a wish to do it like strongly documentary or something like this. This is something that you, of course, it's your way of expressing. And it's, what do you think are pros and cons, like what is good and what is bad in this kind of approach?
I think it's like life is complicated. It's never only sad people laugh, even in the worst moments. Even you imagine the worst things that happen, people still they laugh, and it's the image is not you can say black or white, but it's not one way. So of course, when we do a show about life, we find it funny. We find it sometimes tragic and funny in the same time.
And also, I think it's stage in general. For me, it's a place to take idea or an event and to make it poetic. And it will never be the same on stage. So if we add something that is more, that can make us think, or I wish someone else think. So this is the stage for me.
Yeah, but we can also say that in last decade or even more, the contemporary circus is really getting very powerful and also political. Yeah, how do you see this kind of form of theater to communicate with the public, or the theater field in common?
I will talk about the contemporary circus because this is what I do. When we created this show,
and because you don't have microphones, so
when we created this show,
I can speak.
do you want to speak? I can give you my microphone. When we created this show, I was still living in Israel. I don't live there anymore. I live in France. And the contemporary circus scene in Israel is very small and not always super contemporary. I don't know many more shows that deal also with political subjects in Israel. So in Israel, the scene in circus, of course, the scene we created in Israel is not a contemporary circus scene. It's a performance art scene that is sometimes a lot of times very political, very contemporary, and we create in this scene and we add this element of circus that me and Tomilio we bring into the group. I moved to France for many reasons. The first of them political. But also because in France there is a much more interesting contemporary circus scene that, like you say, is really developing and is bringing more subjects to deal with than just circus and movement. And it's nice.
Yeah. Now that you mentioned, what is the situation in Israel about non-government theater field? Like, we also struggle here all the time. We have institutions and then NGOs. And what is the system in Israel?
There is no system. It's hard to answer this, I think, because we are very independent in that sense that we we are a group, but we are not formally a group, and there is no a place that we practice in it, or a theater. We are performing in a fringe theater that invite us after they saw the show. We did get some money from the funds from the lottery. You know what it is, which is also very horrible, taking money from people that gamble. But but to make this show, this is like a way to do it, to get some like you. איך אומרים להגיש?
להגיש, present.
כאילו כדי לקבל את הכסף.
I
don't think it's you apply and then you get the money, and we were part of a festival, but now we are working on a new show and we need to find money from scratch again.
Yeah, but that's interesting because I think in Slovenia you can't get from the lottery like there as a sponsor because of, I don't know, so you have, no, I think it's like a law, something like this, yeah, at least for the art scene, yeah, art sphere, yeah. Any question, mogoče kako vprašanje?
Thank you. Thank you very much for the show. Firstly, I just, in my experience, Palestinians aren't frightened of rain. They are desperate for water because they don't have any water. So I just want to mention that. I have a question, and I might have misunderstood. So forgive me if I have, but I wanted to ask about the worst cuss ever seen. And so I think what was said was that you didn't want it to include racism, homophobia, I think sexism, not anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism. But then why pro-Palestinian as part of that sentence? And as I said, if I misunderstood, forgive me, because obviously I'm just catching it as it goes. So I was just a bit confused why to be pro-Palestinian was to be the same as racist or homophobic or sexist or, you know, blah, blah, blah.
Danielle, sometimes she gets confused with her English, where usually she says it the other way. She says she doesn't want it to be pro-Zionist or anti-Palestinian.
Oh, so it's just
yeah.
I'm sorry.
Še kakšno vprašanje? Mogoče? Okay. Maybe one more question. Yeah. Then again, you decided to say it at the beginning. All the acts or the scenario actually happened in real life. And how do you see this relation between art and fiction and documentary and manipulating with this? Because it's, you know, once you say something like this, it gets another optic of seeing the performance.
If I understood your question right, I think that when you present stories, it's always subjective. Each one in the room will tell another story about something that happened. And we wanted to open each segment in the show to be, I think, if you agree with me, as wide as possible, so you can get whatever you get from the show, although it was representing a certain story. So many moments could be seen in many different angles.
Me, I think that real things are more interesting than non-real things. I think, like, if I tell a story to someone and it actually happened to me or to someone I know, it's more interesting than if I tell a story that I made up. I'm interested in this in my art, in telling real things.
I think it also relates to taking chances on stage, because stage it's alive, and we bring ourselves, and by saying our life, it's it's a risk, and it's make the material more alive, maybe for me.
And also, how did you decide that you will have some short fragments of your own language in the performance? Because it gets another dimension, and it's always good to hear, your authentic. Because your body speaks different when you start to speak in your native.
Totally different.
This was actually the part where you refer to the part that Danielle and me do something together, right? This is the only part in Hebrew.
And also the deaf language with the
Sign language and
well, the part when we do the sign language is not actually our language. It's not my native tongue, it's Arabic. My native tongue is Hebrew. And we bring this part, usually we tell it to a Hebrew-speaking audience, and we try to...
it's called translation.
Yeah, and it's to put our audience to try to challenge our audience and to see how they feel when they hear this language that in one hand it surrounds them, there are people, 20% of the population of Israel, they speak Arabic. This is their mother's tongue, and all the countries around, and it's a very, but actually they don't speak Arabic at all, and all they know in Arabic is kasses, because all the kasses in Hebrew are in Arabic, and things they learn in the military, like give me your ID, or stop or I shoot you. And we try to challenge the people by speaking Arabic and seeing what it makes them feel, and what they do know and what they don't know. And then when we do it not in Israel, then the vocabulary of the people, it changes in Arabic, and instead of cusses and military things, they know food and terrorists and dictators. So we do this, but this is not our tongue.
And about the part before, it's actually based on a recording of a conversation that Danielle had with her mother, like she said a few weeks ago. And then it's so original, like we imitate her actually telling the story. And there is a funny thing in the recording, there is a cat. Suddenly the cat passes and everybody's silent. Like, you hear the recording, meow. And this is the part where we look aside because we wanted to refer to it, and then we took off the recording, and actually we were left with this. And suddenly Namer stood there, and he was like with the signs of the translation.
It was just this part was impossible to translate, really. Like we could not duplicate her mimics, her language, and then we thought, okay, it's nice. We have a bunch of languages, a bunch of things. We just leave it like this.
Okay. Mogoče še kakšno vprašanje? Any question?
Okay, hey, congrats on the show first. Now, I really like the documentary aspect of the shows and all that, blah, blah, blah. But I have one question, it baffles me, and maybe I missed something. So it's all your real life stories, and you put them together in a form of a devised theater practice. And then comes the second last story of Tolstoy. Why?
Well, when we took this subject, we went to all kind of researches in our life. Also what happened to us, but we talked about it with other people, and we contemplate about it, and we were looking for materials that relate to this subject of conflict in general. And I someone suggested me to read this story by Tolstoy, because we were thinking about how the land, or our land, is the core of our conflict. And when I went to read this story, I felt it's far enough that for me it will be easy to tell, because it's איך אומרים משל?
It's a parallel, it's a story that helps to explain something that is a bit
Like a tale. So it's a story, it's not related to me, it's far away, it's a different, it was written in a different language, but when I read it, I know it's about me, it's about my country, and it's about my conflict. And so it is from real life that, I mean, in this year, someone gave me this story to read. So I took it to our rehearsal room, and then we said, okay, and then I need to rewrite it because it's very long. And so it's mine now. This story, it's mine.
Also, I just think that in many ways, this show is just, for me, personally, it's a conversation between me as Namer, as a person, and the audience. And in this conversation, it's very natural that, like, I tell you a story that happened to me, I tell you about a story that I read about. It's like we're talking, and I tell you, oh, I read this story by Tolstoy, like she said, and it's just part of the conversation.
Mogoče še kakšno vprašanje? Okay. Then I would like to thank you for the performance and the discussion, and enjoy. Zala, thank you.
Thank you all for coming. And just to say, if you want to continue to talk to us about this, we're still here. And I'm very happy to hear from people and talk about things.